Okay, we are live with the Android locals. So I figured I would bring it back to Android format in April 2003 because there is an upcoming Android format tournament happening on the Format Library Discord server coming up relatively soon. So I figured I'd pull it back to that. If you want a different tournament to join, we've got a Teledad tournament starting tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Sunday. To mix it up. I normally do these on Saturday or Sunday, but it's starting on Sunday on the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. Teledad's a fun format that I unfortunately have not been able to actually get to yet. I had a very busy week, busier than I expected, but I should be releasing that relatively soon because I just got to release my GX format tier list for all the GX formats that I went through, which should be pretty quick. And then I will be releasing my sort of video going through all the cards in Teledad format. Both of those are going to be like relatively long. The Teledad one is going to be much longer than the other one, but should still be happening either this weekend or early next week, and it should be fun. So I look forward to diving into that and then diving into Teledad. And luckily, Teledad's a pretty short format, so I should be able to go through that relatively quickly, and then get into the next format, which is Cat format, which might also be a short format as well. But anyway, Android format's fun. It is named after Jinzo because Jinzo is a big monster in it. And, so yeah, I mean, it can dominate a little bit, but it looks like we're gonna be just having two people in this locals because there were only two. Wagenwaffen and Dump Truck here. Yeah, it looks like no one else is joining. I'll give it till 5 past. See if people join. Otherwise, it might be a very short stream. Just Wagenwaffen v Dump Truck exhibition match. Yeah, normally we've been able to get 4 up to this point. We actually, in the local signups, we had 4 people vote for this time, but only 2 people have shown up. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough when it happens that way. Actually, only one of the people who voted for this time showed up. So, I don't know. If in the future, yeah, only 2 people. Yep, that's where we are at, Tyler. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. 2 people is fun in its own way. It is what it is, right? But yeah, it's in the future. It's good for people out there to vote on the times they can actually attend, because we had many people vote for this time, and only 2 people showed up. So, yeah, and maybe if we had done it at a different time that other people voted for, maybe they would have shown up as opposed to not showing up. So, yeah, this is a bit tough of a time for people in Europe to get to, and we do have some amount of people who play in these that are in Europe, and so yeah, it just would have been probably better to not have it at this time. But this won out on the poll that we had in the Discord, and that's how it goes sometimes. But I guess, it's not the worst thing in the world if we get 2. Gives me a chance to sort of, go through my future plans with the channel, as I mentioned earlier. I'm going to be releasing my GX format tier list relatively soon, and then we'll be diving into the new cards of Teledad, and then we'll be diving into Teledad proper, which should be not too long in terms of covering it. I mean, it is kind of a tier 0 format in more of a sure way than something like Gladiator Beast format is. So, yeah, I mean, it should go pretty quickly. And then we'll be diving into Cat format after that, which also will probably be a quicker format. Although there are more things you can play in that format. It just is very, fast paced because you're doing Cat plays in Dark Strike Fighter, or you're doing Black Wings at full power, basically. And it gets kind of crazy. So that should also be a pretty quick one. And then we'll be diving into, I believe, Lightsworn format comes before Edison, but we'll be diving into Lightsworn, and then we'll be getting into Edison, which is going to be pretty fun. But yeah, as true of YGO1 says, the pain, it's in my brain. But, it is what it is, right? Yeah, Cat format is indeed next after Teledad, so that'll be fun. And that'll be a tournament next month as well. We're going to be having that tournament. Hopefully, I'll actually be at the format by the time we get there. But I'm glad you're excited, G-Lam. Again, I always say, different people are going to enjoy different things, and that's why I'm covering all the formats, right? Because a lot of people look at Cat format and they're like, oh, this format's so sacky and stuff. Why would anyone want to play this? But, people enjoy that level of sackiness sometimes. And also, like, in a more aggressive format, it's not necessarily going to test your control skills as much, sure, but it does test other skills. So it is good to sort of hone those skills, and it can teach you more about the game in general. So I'm excited for it too. I think it'll be fun. It is a very explosive time in the game's history, but it's a fun time to be around. Well, I said I'd give it till 5 past. 5 past is here. So yeah, we're just going to start with 2 players. So we are going to shuffle these seeds up. I'm sure that will matter. Shuffle, shuffle. And yeah, there we go. We're going to get the party started. It's great locals. Yeah, there we go. So there we are. We are going to be starting, and we're going to be going into Dueling Book. Let's see. I know Dump Truck was hosting earlier, but I assume he maybe unhosted while he waited for the bracket to go up. Yep. They're asking, is that just the one match? And yep, it is, because only 2 people showed up. So, yeah. All gas from here to like Hat, in my opinion. I'm very excited for the ride ahead, because I'll say, in terms of my personal like Yu-Gi-Oh history, I was playing around like end of GX, early 5Ds. So this is sort of my sweet spot, nostalgia style. And after that, I kind of lost touch with the game, like near the end of 5Ds. And so I'm excited to see what I missed in the Zexal era and then beyond. That'll be very fun to go through and sort of experience for myself, and just play some Yu-Gi-Oh that I'm nostalgic for. The room is open, but is it started yet is the question. Is it? Oh, Teledad format. Aren't we doing Android format? This is an Android locals. There we go. Okay, we got the dual sounds on. Let's mute those dual sounds. GLM says 5D and early Zexal was one I played the most, and each set had such major impacts. I am very excited for that too, because like I feel like GX was dominated largely by sets that did not really do much of an impact on the game, which made it feel a bit of a slog to get through, honestly, because it wasn't changing, right? You had the Stein formats where it was like one Stein format after another, and you never really get anything like to really shake up the metagame except for Banlist, which can shake things up in their own way, but not in the same degree as getting a brand new thing to play around with. But Todd, is it a problem if tournament participants listen to your commentary live? Nope, not a problem at all. There is a bit of a delay in the stream, and also I try and keep things vague. Like if there is a play that I see and I'm like, oh, this could actually shift the course of the game, I say, oh, I think I know what to do here, but I'm not gonna like say it until it actually pops up, or at least I try to do that. I'm not always perfect with that, but either way, if I do something like that, that's on me, not on them. So it is perfectly fine if players listen to the commentary. That is fine. So no worries about that. Also, I'm not always right. Like I think I'm an okay duelist in these formats, but you know, I'm not infallible. Sometimes I say a line and that's the wrong line to do, right? So you know, listening to my commentary might be more bad than good, right? But yeah, History Wide One says, I'm really good at being big. That's very true. I've learned a lot about being big from you. But yeah, here comes the painful choice, sending a Comfy, a Duo, a Forceful, a Dark Hole, and a Sangan. Now, a common thing in these formats with painful choice, when you don't have Chaos Monster, you don't have Sinister Serpent, a big thing that people like to do is send all 3 cantrips and some other cards, right? Because one of the nice things about that is you don't really want to draw the hand rips in a simplified game state. So getting them out of your deck early is very nice. It can also play into things like setting up a Sangan or a Magician of Faith that your opponent might have that you don't necessarily have ways to deal with. So it looks like they're going to reborn the Sangan here as well. So they would be able to get that Sangan into rotation either way here. And this could backfire for Dump Truck, depending on if that's a Magician of Faith. If Wyman flips up the Magician of Faith, adds back Duo, and manages to kill the Sangan before activating the Duo, then Dump Truck could lose everything. But Dump Truck could just search out... well, actually, Sinister Serpent's not legal yet, so you can't search out that. But it would just be a 1-for-1 trade because the last card in hand is a Spell Trap. So, but yeah, Sinister Serpent not legal yet. That comes in Joey Pegasus format, which is the next format that, you know, I covered on the channel, and that comes chronologically. And yeah, Jar Greed's going to be pretty good there. Jar of Greed is a card that had a lot of value in this format outside of just being a good draw. One MST is at 3 copies and very commonly played, so it can bait out like an MST, but also it is fodder in your graveyard for things like Bazoo the Soul Eater and Skull Lair, both of which can actually remove from play non-monsters in this format, so it's pretty good. But yep, and as the true Waiju1 says, Sangan is now at 1 with the rest of the cards added to the list being new. Yes. So Sangan's now at 1 to join Witch at 1. And I think that's a good change because having multiples of Sangans or Witches, it just leads to these sort of sloggy situations where like you search out basically a Sangan with a Sangan that then searches you out into Witch. So it's just like a chain of monsters that is not quite as enjoyable as just searching out something different, right? Even when both are at 1, you can search out like a Witch with a Sangan, but it feels a bit better because you're like, okay, I'm searching out something new. I'm not just getting Sangan, searching Sangan, etc. But a painful from Wagmon is going to come down here, and there are 2 of the hand rips along with Pot of Greed, Jar of Greed, and MST. And note, that is getting activated before the monsters flip face up. That does lend credence to the idea that it is a Magician of Faith, especially since that Pot of Greed was sent, and that can be very rough there. Now, Duptrick is giving Wagmuffin the MST, which, in my opinion, implies that back row is not a Solemn Judgment or something. Yep, it's just a Skull Lair. I maybe even would have potentially... I maybe would have gone for... Oh, they got Mass Sorcerer there. Okay, never mind. I would have potentially not picked up the MST there for them. I maybe would have given them, like... I guess it's kind of tough there. Because, you know, you're getting that search off Sangan. That's your one thing. But I had to read that it was Magician of Faith, so... what do I know? Either way there, if it was Magician of Faith, they could have just flipped it up, grabbed MST if you wanted to, but, yeah. Tomato's going to come down. Tomato's going to crash into the Mass Sorcerer there. And that's going to clear that. No way to stop that in this format. And yeah, it's going to deal 5 and pass back to Wagmuffin. This seems like a very modest board, but it actually is a pretty decent one. Tomato can go into tomato, etc. So it sort of is very resilient against battle damage here. And, well, it's not resilient against Fisher. So yeah, it's not quite the best board, I guess, but then Wagmuffin's going to bring out a tomato of their own. It does play into things like Dark Hole and Raigeki, but Dark Hole is in the graveyard here, so they don't really have to worry about that. The question is, does Dump Truck have the Raigeki? And it looks like they do not, so that's going to be the end of that game 1. And we're going to go on to the game 2. Now, sliding's a bit interesting in this format, and a lot of the DM era formats, honestly, because there aren't really like too many Silver Bullet side deck cards that you bring in for things. Also, a lot of the decks are kind of samey. They play a lot of the same things. And so, you know, you don't really end up with like the craziest side deck transformations that you get. A lot of the time it does come down to like whether you're going first or second, or depending on what your opponent is playing, you know, what their play style is, right? Because oftentimes you're going to be playing a sort of like tomato control style deck, which is sort of one of the names given to the like tier 0, you know, deck in Android format. People debate back and forth on whether it's tier 0 or not. I personally call it tier 0. I think it is, at least. It's got enough dominance that, you know, it would be called tier 0 otherwise. And yes, the tournaments are very small, but over and over again, that deck does win. And there have been other decks that have topped here and there, but nothing consistently enough to actually, you know, cause me to be like, okay, this format's not tier 0. But I think tier 0 formats can be fun. I think that they can provide a great like level of skill expression. Like a good analogy I like to say is that, you know, no one calls chess a bad game just because like both players play the same pieces, right? And I think the same can apply with tier 0 formats, right? Knowing the skillful interactions that you have to do to maneuver through the game and win the game is very, very important. And so I do think that it makes it kind of fun. I'm not going to have them do 2 out of 3 just because, like, I guess I could, but like, I feel like, you know, for locals, if only 2 people show up, I'd prefer this to be a lesson to people, you know, just come again, you know, come later. Don't like sign up and then don't show up, like, or else we're just not going to have a long locals. You know, we're just going to have 1 match. So, you know, hopefully people feel some guilt over that. Although this is a pretty good match. I think this is a very, very fun one. I always like seeing Android gameplay. I think it's a very fun format, even though it does have its detractors. I think it's a very good one from the DM era. It sort of hits that sweet spot of the tier 0 sort of area of the DM era, for me at least. Like, you could argue that Critter is a bit too slow and also not tier 0. It's got multiple decks. But Critter is a bit slow for some people. Yada and Fiber and things like that are a bit too fast because you have like Graceful Charity in the format and doing stuff like that. I think Android's like a nice sweet spot between those two. And it's pretty fun. I think it's a really cool format in the game's history. And I think it feels definitely like a very particular point in time that some people might like to recapture. But anyways, Bazoo is attacking into that elf, and it does get over it. In this format, you have something called the beater triangle, where it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors between these beaters, where Bazoo's Soul Eater beats over Gemini Elf, which beats over the Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, which stops the Bazoo from banishing things, and thus can beat over the Bazoo. Although the Kaiku beating Bazoo, it does take a turn or two sometimes. But yeah, that Bazoo's just going to have to attack in with 16. Don't necessarily want to banish the last card in Grave there. And Dumptrick's going to set one, set another, pass back. So things started off well for Wagamuffin, but now things are taking a bit of a turn. We'll have to see if Wagamuffin's able to reverse the course of this game. Raigeki's a good way to do that, especially hitting that Magician of Faith. Very, very brutal play there. But, if you got the Raigeki, you got the Raigeki. I guess Dark Hole could have also done it. This does imply that they don't have a Dark Hole on hand right now, or else they would have activated that, so at least Dumptrick didn't have to worry about that. Of course, the top deck could get there, but you don't need to worry about it right now. Tower Comment says, the trio of beaters is so elegant, I wonder if it was intentional, considering they don't have any similarities in theming. It might have been intentional, but an interesting thing to note about this format is that Bazoo the Soul Eater in the OCG did not work the way it does here, where Bazoo the Soul Eater in the OCG could only banish monsters. It was actually a mistranslation that was then run with by the TCG that allows it to banish anything from the grave. Now, it could still fit into that triangle, right? Like Bazoo, on paper, if you got enough monsters in grave, you can banish them to get over a Gemini Elf and play around with that. But it does mean that, like, it manifests a lot more in the TCG than the OCG in terms of those three monsters dynamic, right? And I actually like it a bit better this way, because I think it's just neat. I think it's neat that it's so accessible to use Bazoo, and so you actually see it around a lot, whereas if it was not so accessible, it might not see much play. I think it would still see some play, but you wouldn't really be able to play multiple copies of it as much. It would kind of be like the one card that you play there of them. And I think that would be a shame, because some decks already play one copy alone, but I like playing multiples. Speaking of multiples, you might be wondering about all these TTs running around and trap holes. TT and trap hole are very important in this format, and people go back and forth on the ratios to use there. Some people like, cutting down on the TTs to leave with trap holes because of that beater triangle. Because if you have one beater up and your opponent summons out a beater to beat over your beater, then you really want to be able to preserve your beater on board, because it just threatens so much in this format. So trap hole actually is preferred by some people over TT because it does not clear your own advantage there. And some people prefer TT because it has more potential for board wiping. But, if you are a good Android player, generally you don't play into the TTs. So it's a bit tricky, whether TT is better than trap hole or not. There also are some other things that TT can do compared to trap hole. For instance, TT can stop something like Mass Sorcerer, which if it is played, which it has been played in Wagamuffin's deck here, it can sort of spiral out of control if you're just relying on trap hole there. And yeah, but I know that Kaiku also wasn't intended to banish any card from the opponent's graveyard, but it doesn't really matter as much for it in the context of the beater triangle compared to like Bazoo. So that's why I didn't mention it there. But yeah, that's true. They did Frog the Jam dirty. They let that mistranslation through, but Frog the Jam, they were like, no, we got to just clear it from the records. I think it's because Frog the Jam stuff really happened, later on when you had Konami take over, and they were like, why are we doing the except Frog the Jam clause? We should really just, change it to Slime Toad, which is just a travesty. One of the biggest sort of tragedies in Yu-Gi-Oh history, for sure. So the mistranslation, to clarify, the mistranslation was that, on the cards, it didn't mention specifically monsters. And then Kevin Tuart on top of that said that Konami was going out of the card to work that way. So it's sort of multiple levels of miscommunication. I don't think that Tuart actually, intended to make something that, just didn't work at all. But MSG very clutch there. Need that for the pre-mat there to stop the Jinza from coming down and actually killing Dumptrick here. But Dumptrick is in a very tough spot. They're down to a very simplified game state, and Sangan's very good for Wagamuffin in the simplified game state. They're set in one. Is Wagamuffin going to commit more to the board if they got it, or they're just going to attack in? Looks like they're just going to attack in. I think that's a smart play here. and Dump Truck is just going to take it. That shuts off things like pre-mat of their own if they've got that. So, yeah, it's a very tricky situation for Dump Truck to be in here. They're going to set one, pass back. And we got to see what Wagamuffin does here. So it'll be a bit tricky for them. What are they going to do? They're just going to attack in. Okay, no fear. And they're going to hit the Magician of Faith. Probably better to attack into that, honestly, than to just leave it there. They might have to read that Dump Truck has a Jinzo in hand. That could be something. And Dump Truck going to search out that Dark Hole. Makes sense. Snatch Steal doesn't really do much because you're just, sort of going parity on life points there. Confiscation, obviously going to be a bit unfortunate there. Dark Hole and Change of Heart. Okay, which one do you take if you're Wagamuffin here? I personally would take the Change of Heart. I would get rid of that. It just stops other plays, and it looks like they are indeed going to do that. Dark Hole, if you're Wagamuffin, you probably don't hate that much because, like, Dark Hole gets you another monster, right? So that will indeed go through. Kill the Sangan. What is Wagamuffin going to search out now? Wouldn't it be crazy if the last card in hand is Forceful? That'd be kind of neat. Sangan is going to be rough. Okay, yeah, there's the Forceful. Okay. So, yep, that will shuffle back that Cannon Soldier, and now we are in a 1-to-1 card situation here. Wagamuffin drawing, not getting anything they want to commit. Painful choice here, very good for Dump Truck. They could potentially just send a bunch of monsters here. They could potentially give themselves better draws on the follow-up. They could potentially take a defensive card here. There's a lot they can do, and this is part of what makes Painful Choice such a complicated card in these formats. Very, very skill-intensive card to use, and it really can make or break games. So this might be the most important play of the match for Dump Truck here. Very, very tricky stuff. Now, something else you got to consider is that in Android format, there are a lot of Saki cards running around. So you do have to keep in mind, the longer you let the game go on, the more likely it is that Wagamuffin will have an out to whatever you set up. So you don't have to worry about Change of Heart. You do have to worry about Snatch Steal potentially. If we look at the number of spell and trap removers in the grave, there are 2 MSTs. We don't know if Dump Truck's brought in Dust Tornadoes here, but they might have to worry about that as well. And it makes things a little bit tricky here for them. So it looks like they're going to send Tomato, Witch, Gemini, Bazoo, and Reborn. It looks like the Gemini Elf is going to get added to Dump Truck's hand. So that does represent a 2-turn clock, but if Wagamuffin can clear it, then that means that, they won't have to worry about it compared to something like a Witch or a Tomato or something like that. It could also just mean that they've got the Snatch Steal in hand, which they do indeed have. So I would have honestly read the giving them the Change of Heart, or giving them the Gemini Elf, that, they did have a Snatch Steal in hand. But, it could be a thing where, like, there's nothing you can do about it if they have it or not. So you just got to go for this, say, like, oh, you're bluffing Change of Heart or Snatch Steal, that is, and just run with that. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the monsters left in Wagamuffin's grave, they still have 2 Mystic Tomatoes left in deck. They still have a bunch of things to beat over that Gemini Elf. So you really can't necessarily afford to set the Gemini Elf, even if you think that they've got the Snatch Steal. So it does make sense to go for this, but it does make for a very interesting dynamic there. So very, very GG's. And yeah, very, very good stuff. Yeah, it is short. Sometimes you do short streams, I guess. So I guess that'll be it for me. I'll just use this time to prepare for the Teledad and the tier list videos. So that's what I'll do now. But anyway, thank you for joining me. And I know it's been a while since I've done a video. We will be doing more videos in the future. Don't worry. It's been a busy week for me. There might be some more busy weeks coming up as well. But don't worry. Videos will keep on coming, even if they come a little bit slower than they have in the past. So look forward to them. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know when they come out. I guess do the bell notification if you really want to know when they come out. And yeah, I hope you enjoy as always. Join the Discords. And listen, it's not your fault, Tyler. Also, no worries, it does happen sometimes. And as long as the monthly tournaments get more people, that's what I mainly care about, because those are the big ones. So yeah, join the Teledad tournament coming up on Sunday if you haven't already. And also, if you like Android format, go on over Format Library and join that tournament too, because it would be really fun to get this tournament doing well. But I hope you all enjoyed as always. Until next time, I've been Ben from YGF0. I'm signing off. Peace.